Hi everybody and welcome. Today we are going to continue on our journey with general ledger data, and I'm super excited because I've got a visual that I've been playing with and learning that I'm so excited to show. So this is the first time I'm showing it, and I'm still learning it, but we're going to take and play with our GL data from GP inside of Microsoft Power BI. And before I get to Marlena, this is the session description. I just want to point this out because the database that was already set. So if you're watching this and you're wondering where and how I got the data, you'd need to watch the April session from the website, and you'll need to watch the May session because I made a few changes to the data model, but I took exactly what we built there. I'll explain what changes I made, and then you would be up to speed. So thank you, Marlena and Haley, for giving me a place to talk about the stuff I love, Power BI, and of course, our beloved GP data at the same time. So Marlena, you want to say anything before I get started?
No, we really appreciate all you have been doing for us and for our users and for all GP users. And it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited. So it gives me a chance to do two things I love the most: talk and talk about something I love, Power BI.
Perfect.
Whoops, let me mute my phone. I'm sorry about that. I just spent the week with my parents, and my dad reminded me, he used to call me motor mouth when I was little. And so I still am a motor mouth. So thank you guys again for giving me a place to share some of the information that I love so much. I do want to talk about some upcoming stuff we have going on, collaboration between myself and the fabulous people at DuxPro. And one of them is actually a paid thing I want to talk about. We're doing a full hands-on training class. It's remote. We have stretched it out from what we've done in the past. It is 3 half days in a row from noon to 4 Eastern time. And we're going to be building out accounts receivable and customer information. And what makes this really interesting is that it's using GP data. And then when we get done, you get the copy of what I built, and you could automatically run it with your own data. So it's learning more about the GP database structure while you're doing the data modeling inside of Power BI and getting to learn Power BI. It's a really cool combination introduction class. So that's pretty much fun. Next month also, we'll continue this monthly series, and we're going to talk about cash flow. This is probably, I don't know, this probably has to be one of my single favorite topics when I'm talking about ERP system and Power BI. I think it's some real cool way to monitor what's going on with your cash and help you improve your business success. Then we are in August, going to be moving on and talking about sales order processing. So we're going to really be talking about open data, like managing all your sales orders using Power BI, all your open sales orders. So it should be a whole lot of fun. Okay, and I'm maybe going to show some other Microsoft tools inside of it. So I'm really excited about that. At the end, I do have a link to a survey, and the survey, for completing the survey, you get a chance to tell me what it is you want to see, and we can start incorporating that. That's where I get most of my ideas from. And also, it gives me the opportunity to get your email so I can send you a link to some of the information from today's session, perhaps. Sometimes that includes a template of Power BI, so you could just start using it in your system, or always includes the slide deck. So keep that in mind. Here is our agenda for today. We're going to do a brief review of the data model that we've been working on over the past couple of months, and that, again, we're going to continue. We're using general ledger data. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about GL account segments and how and why we would want to use those inside of Power BI and some changes I've made to them. And then I'm going to show you some custom things that I've done to the data model for this new custom visual that I'm going to show you. So I have a brand new visual I'm going to show you, along with building out some out of the box visuals. And the visual I'm going to show you, I'm showing you the free version. There is a paid version. I'll share what the pricing is. It's really a low price point, but what you could do with the free version is really very cool. So it's worth using. And so there are a couple of custom visuals that are in-app source that are free that I love, and this happens to be one of them. When I talk about next month cash flow, I'll show you another one. And we're going to spend a little more time again talking about beginning balances, or balances in general, actually, and how we can prepare our work for that. And then we're going to build. So that's where we'll spend the bulk of our time. I know it doesn't look like it on this agenda, but it is indeed where we'll spend the bulk of our time. Now, I mentioned at the very beginning that you would need to look, if you want to see where the data set was set up, you would need to look in the past. So if you go to the Dex Pro website, and you would just go to tips and training, free 1-hour trainings. Oh, and I had to circle the cash flow one, but then you would come down here and find the appropriate training session and just register for it. And then you automatically get a link to watch it. So they have all of the previous recordings out there. So you could watch all of those over again, and you could see how we built everything that we've done. So let's start by reviewing the data model that we are using now. So what I'm going to do is pull up Power BI. Now, based off of the last session that we did, I just removed the reports, and I took the blank page and I renamed the tab blank, and I put a background color so things would pop a little bit. I find them easier to see. This is just Belinda things. And I put the title up at the top, so I have this consistency when I go to create a page. I just duplicate it and I can start using it. So that's what I've done. Now, I've also here downloaded this visual. We'll talk more about that later, but let's talk about how we have set up our data structure. So I'm going to just come in here. I had created date tables 2 different ways in our date session. That was last month. I created a calendar using DAX. And then I also connected using the fiscal periods inside of GP. Now I did remove the fiscal period query, and I am using the DAX calendar, but you wouldn't have to do that if you created this manually. But that's the only thing that I did that I removed, I should say. Now I've added in a couple of other things, but we had our accounts table where we were getting our chart of accounts. I have the budget. We added the budget in, and then we have our transactions. These 4 plus the calendar that's done in DAX were queries that we did in previous months. And I did do a few changes to them. I've included this department. I'll show you how I did that in just a moment. And then I have this other query called statement lines, and we'll talk about what those are in a bit. So if I were to go into the data mode, I always call these the 3 little icons. In the data mode, I did make a few changes to it. One of them is in the accounts section. I took the account description and I duplicated the account number, and I made one field. And then that way I'm not looking at 2 separate fields to see the account description and the account number. I like this, I think, and I've been doing this a while, and it does create, as you could see, quite a long field for some of these things, like this accumulated depreciation one. But I like that it's a single field and not 2 separate fields. Now I left the account number separate because if we go back to the relation mode, my account number here connects to the budget. That's how it relates there. And then it also connects to the account number in the transactions. And that's critical that I keep the account number intact so those relationships stay intact. But I don't necessarily need to show the account number. So I could just come in and hide it here, hide it in report mode, so that when users are building it out, they don't see it, but it's still there. You can see I have department ID and report line hidden as well. Those are just fields that might confuse somebody. Instead, I would want them to use the account here. And likewise, it relates to transactions. And if I open it up, I do not need the account number to display here. When I want them, so I'm going to hide this one. I just right mouse click and I'm going to hide this in report view. That way, when I use this or when I want to look at transactions from the transaction query, and I want to get the account number here, I want to go to the account query and get it. And that way it'll only show up in one place when I'm in the report mode. I could see account here, but no account number. Let's stretch this out a bit. And if I go to transaction itself, I do not see the account number listed here. And I might want to do the same thing with budget. I might want to hide it here. And you notice that in this mode, if in the newer version of Power BI, I could just hover over it. There's that little eyeball and I could click on it to hide it. And now it doesn't show up here. And that way users won't be quite so confused as to where to get the account number. All right. So that's a little bit about this particular module. So now I want to talk about the GL account segments. I told you this was the slide part was going to be pretty quick. I want to save a lot of time for building. And particularly when I'm talking about the account segments, in GP, we can code to give the names of each segment in GP. So we know we could create our general ledger chart of accounts. We can have up to 10 segments. We know that. And we can give each of those segments in account format a name. So each segment has a name. So like in this case, division is segment 1, and I can see it right there. So I can go into GP and assign names to it. So if I go into financial and then under setup, I go to segment, then I pull up the segment I want to see. So in this case, in Fabricam, I have 3 segments. So I pulled up the first segment. And then I can then click on a lookup and find a specific number right there. So I could select like 200, and then I could see the description and I could change it here if I want to. So this is one way I can get the data. Now, one of the things to note though, if I want to get the data from GP for the segments from this table, which would be ideal because then it gets backed up, you're going to need to make sure you go into GP, into SQL Server in the database, and assign rights for people to be able to access this table. Tables don't normally have rights associated with them. Most people do it with views, but you could also create a view and then give access to the view. So that's something to note, that's something that you would need to do. Now, another way you could do it is by utilizing the chart of accounts. Now, you could take the account number and separate it out and get the account that way, but you're only going to see departments that have accounts listed there, which is fine, but I don't know, it could get a little bit confusing. What I did is I went into add column in the query editor, and I'll show you how I did this. I selected the account number and then I chose to extract, and I said extract before the delimiter. So let me show you how I did this. So here I am in Power BI. On the home tab, I'm going to go to transform data. I clicked on the icon so I can access it. And there we go. All right. So what I did is I highlighted this particular column. I chose add column, extract, and I'm extracting before the delimiter. And now I can tell it what delimiter I'm interested in. And that's a dash because 000 dash is what I'm looking for. And I could click on advance if I want to, and even tell it how many characters if I want. That's another way you could do it. I'm going to click OK. Now, one of the things, sometimes it'll go, oh, this looks like a number, and it'll try to reset it to a number. And if it does that, just delete the step where it changed it to a number for you. But this is how I got the field. So if I were to, let me delete that. Here's where I did it. And here is, notice the same screen. This is where I actually did it. And then I renamed that column from text before delimiter to department ID. That's how I got the department ID on here, which is that segment. And now I want to take this information and relate it to the department names. And that's another advantage of having that 40200 table is I could get the name. So what I did here is I just created my own data set. I went in and chose enter data. Let me show you how I did that. This one's really kind of cool. If you ever have data you want to enter. So I have this little Excel spreadsheet where I created my department IDs and my department names. Now, advantage of using the 40200 table would be, or a view of it, is if you add a new department, it would show up with no name, and at least you would know you're missing a name, right? You'd have a blank there. So in this particular case, if it gets added, I'm not going to necessarily know that something was there. So that's something worth noting. But this is how I connected the data. And I'm going to just copy this particular little table here. And what I'm going to do is just choose enter data. And I get this blank data. Now I changed the name of it to department, but I'm going to leave this one as table. And you could come in and enter in a column name, but I'm going to just add, I have 2 columns I'm going to click on the one and paste. And then I could just change the department names. But one of the things that you could do that's really kind of cool in Power BI, when this comes up in the query editor, and now you can see I'm on table and my first row contains my column names. Under home, on the home ribbon, I could just choose use first row as headers. And now I have my header set up. Now, this is one of those cases where it said, hey, this looks like a number. I'm going to set it to a number. So it changed department ID 000 to just 0. And here's that change type I talked about. I'm just going to get rid of that. And now they're text again. So that's how I added in the table. So let me delete this. I don't want to have it twice. So not only did I add that particular table, but I also added in this state lines one. And this is just one that I imported in from Excel. And here it is in Excel. And we'll come back and talk about this and why it's important later. But just note, I have this reporting line ID. This is basically how I want my account numbers to appear on a financial statement, on particularly an income statement. And so also under my accounts, I went in and added this conditional column. And the conditional column says, first of all, I deal with unit accounts. If the account type has unit in it, meaning it's not a posting account, then the output would be unit. I don't want it on the report. But here I have if my main segment begins with 40, it goes to line 1. If it's 41, it goes to line 1. Basically, anything that starts from 40 to 4499, anything between those goes to line 01. That's a text field. That's why I had to do all those separately. Then what I did is I came in and said, okay, if it starts with a 45, it's line 3, IS03. And if it starts, anything else that starts with a 4 would be IS04. And here you could see IS03 is cost of goods, IS04 is cost of goods other, and IS01 is sales. And so all I'm basically doing here is deciding, then I have, if it starts with a 5, it's 6 and so forth. And then finally, I didn't do balance sheet. Normally I'd have that listed in here too. So I have balance sheet as well. So I just kind of created where each of these accounts should fall. Now, another way you could do it is by detailing out your account category as lines, and then have something that identifies the account category with a line number. So that's another way that you could do that. All right, got that done. Another thing that I did was I added in, let me come down here. I added in one more line to see if it's income. So if you've ever used Management Reporter or FRX, you know, one of the things that it did was if it had a credit balance, there was a place where we could tell it to reverse the sign. So that's essentially what this is. So I'm telling it, if it's -1, I want to reverse the sign basically, or multiply it times -1. And if it is not being reversed, I'll just multiply it times 1. And I did that by coming in here and just using that typical balance field. So if it's income, the typical balance equals debit, then I'll put 1. Otherwise, it must be a credit, and I'm going to put a -1. And that's how I did that. Now I no longer need the typical balance, So I could come in and right mouse click and choose to actually, I could come in and select both of these. I don't need this posting account anymore either, because the only thing I needed it for was to define whether it was a unit account. And now the report line does that for me. So I no longer need either one of those. So I'm going to just come in and right mouse click and remove both of those. And so that's a little bit of cleanup I did on the accounts. Now on the account transactions, I did not do anything. I left that one intact. So those are all of my queries, that all the changes I made to my query. So let me come back in to my slide deck if I could find it. Here we go. So there was my department. Now, in preparation for that new visual, I created this statement line thing. And again, I just have a report ID and the report name. And this is just something that's unique to this new custom visual I'm going to show you. Then I have a unique line that represents what I wanted to say. So if you've used FRX or Management Reporter before, you're used to that being like 100 or 200 or 300, and then you could renumber those. That's essentially what I did here. I have a sub ID where I'm grouping other things together. I'm not even going to really use that today. Here is an example in the handout of how I did the lines. Now I want to talk about balances, and this is where I set the well, first, the beginning balances. This is something that we did in a previous lesson. I wanted to know how I was handling my beginning balances. In this case, we took away all beginning balances just to make it easier. But you need to pay attention to those because of dates, and you can go back to watch some of the other work that we did. And I think that one we covered mostly in the April session. So that might be something that you want to take a look at there. And then I did my additional column, so I knew when to reverse the sign or not. And then I added a couple of DAX measures, and we talked about DAX a lot in last month's session. So basically, one of the things I did is I created something that gives me the actual, I took the actual measure that we created last month, and I added to it, multiplying it times that that is income, so I could know if I needed to reverse the sign. And because it's a measure, I had to use an aggregation, and because it's always being used by account number, I was able to owe it, and the account number is where that was set. I was able to use min, and then that way it would automatically account for me. So that's something I'm only going to use by account number and not necessarily in totals. Okay. And then budget, I did the same thing, multiplying that. Okay, so those are some of the things that I did to the system. So let's go ahead and build out. So one of the things I'm going to do here is just close this out. Okay, now I already mentioned that I've downloaded this custom visual. When I get this back, I'll show you how I did that. So let me slide my chair over a bit. Okay, in the visualization pane right here, I clicked on the ellipsis and I said I want to get more visuals. And sometimes when you first do this, get more visuals usually highlighted and it's the same color, so it's a little hard to see. What this is going to do is open up App Source, Microsoft App Source. And not all of these visuals out here are free. So I went in and I said, show me the financial. And here is the profit-based one that I'm showing today. Now, you do note this is telling us that it may require an additional purchase. And the additional purchase, again, I'm only showing you the free stuff today because you could do a lot of really cool stuff with the free stuff. We'll take a look at their website at the end, but the pricing on it, just so you know, if you ended up with it, it's pretty reasonable. It is they're a European-based company, so they charge in euros, and it's a minimum 5 users that you have to get, and only the designers need that. So it's $4.90 or €4, 4.9 euros in per user. So we're talking a little less than, or right at $25 a month, depending on the currency rate. So it's reasonable to get that. It's totally reasonable to get the paid editions. And I feel like it's probably worth it. We'll look at the differences between the two. But like I said, I'm showing you today's. And then I clicked on add. Now, when you add a custom visual, it is going to show in this section below. There's actually a little dotted line right there. And you could see here, now you could see the little dotted line right there. And all of the custom visuals will appear in this section. Okay, so we have our profit base. Now, before we do that, I want to build out a couple of other things. We're going to start building things in using our general ledger data that we have set up. And so what I'm going to do, since I have my blank icon here, I'm just going to right mouse click on this page tab and choose duplicate page. And this first one I'm going to do is actually going to be a trial balance. And oh, by the way, I wanted to point out, I might want to look at only a certain number of months or in each time I'm looking at it. So one of the things you could do is I'm going to put filters on this page so everything would be filtered. Maybe I want to look at the last 13 months always, or the last 15 months or 16 months, a year and a half. So I've got time to look at all of last year if I want to, and so forth. So I always have this rolling month thing going on. What I'm going to do is open up my calendar, my date table, and I'm going to take the date and drag it into filters on this page. Now, I could tell by looking at this, my calendar date is set to be a date time. So when I select the field here, I end up in the column tools, and I can see the type is date time. I want to change that to just date. And I want to change the formatting so that it is a short format. So you can see now that looks better. And it does get annoying that my DAX code pops up there, but that's okay. So now that I have my date here, if I want to see that rolling period, I'm going to change it from basic. And you could do advanced, where you could say is on or after, and is on or before. But what I'm going to do instead is because this is a date field, I can either do relative date or relative time. I'm going to choose relative date, and I'm going to say is in the last 16, and then I'm going to change this to calendar months. So you can see I had a lot of options there, calendar weeks. And so depending on what you're looking at, that might be something that you want to do when you're building it out here. And when you use anything other than basic, you do have to apply the filter. Now I'm looking at Fabricam data, and everything's dated in the future. So if I keep this filter out here looking in the last, I'm not going to see anything. And I could change it to look in the next if I want to. But instead, I'm just going to clear it out and leave today included and just collapse that up. Okay, so I'm looking at all dates, but we're going to pretend that we're just looking at the last 16 months. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and add in a matrix visual. And a matrix visual is probably one of my favorite visuals. And I'm going to stretch it out really big, because what we're going to do is make a general ledger trial balance here. And it's going to be right now inclusive of all of our dates, but we could use this filter at any time that we want to narrow it down, or we can even add a filter up at the top if we're interested. And so let's start populating this. Now, when we add the matrix visual, we have the opportunity to select our rows, our columns, and let me see. Yeah, there we go. Our rows, our columns, and our values. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and I'm going to grab the account and put that in my row section. And so that's the one that has the account number and the account name on it. Then I'm going to open up my calendar and add my date in. Now put it in columns, but I want to drag it up under rows. So I have my date in there. And then let's see, I want to go straight to transactions then, and I want to get my journal entry number. And then I want to get my journal entry description that I created, which was the reference and the description. And I might even want to include the subledger information. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of that. Whoops. And then in the values, I want to get debit and credit information. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this back up, and I'm going to not just drag these down, but instead I'm going to make measure with these and then hide the original values. And the reason I'm doing that is because if when I publish this to the cloud, any of the users want to analyze it in Excel, I want them to be able to use those numbers as numbers. Anything that came from the original data source would come across as text. Measures, though, will come across as numbers. So if you see, I'm going to start just by typing in debit and credit. I don't know where debit went. There we go. So I have debit and credit, and you can see them appearing, and they're just fine. But what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to click on the ellipsis, so I add it in here. I'll click on the new measure, and I'm going to call this one debit. And then we'll do a sum. And I'm looking for my debit field. And so now this will just represent the debit amount. So I'm going to drag that in, and you can see it's the same amount. So I'll get rid of the debit amount here. I'm going to hide the debit amount so it doesn't confuse anybody as to which one to use. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the credit. So we'll add a new measure that goes into transactions, and we'll call this one credit. And this will be a sum of the credit. And don't forget to use that tab a lot and let IntelliSense help you type it in correctly. I'll put in the credit amount, get rid of that one, and hide the other. Now I just need to do a little bit of formatting of my debit and credit so that I have dollar values there. I'll start with credit. I have it highlighted over here. I'm in measure tools, which is like column tools before. I'm going to make a currency appear there and put 2 decimal places. And then I'm going to do the same with my debit. Okay, and now I need a net. Not a net as a person, but a net amount. So I'm going to come in here under transactions, click on another new measure, and I'm going to call this net. And this will just simply be debit minus credit. I'm using the measures instead of fields. So I just subtracted those 2 measures. We'll add that in. There it is. Let me format it. And cool. Okay, so if I were to expand down, you can see it's using this outline mode, and I don't really want to use that. So I'm going to come over. I still have it selected. I'm going to come into the paintbrush, and under row headers, I'm going to turn off the stepped layout, and now it's in tabular form. But I have a lot of totals here, and I want to clean the totals up. So let me collapse up row headers, and I'm going to open up subtotals, and I'm going to do a couple of things here. So the first thing that I'm going to do on the subtotals is actually on the background color. I'm going to make that a light gray. So they stand out in light gray right here. And actually, let me apply that to the labels as well. So the whole line is light gray all the way across. But let me clean that up. It's hard to tell what total is what. Maybe I have too many. So I'm also still in subtotals. I'm going to turn on row per level. And now I could see individually what all these totals are. So the account total, those are actually my grand totals. So I'm going to call that one grand total, and I'll show you where that shows up in a moment. And then I have my date total, which is actually where the total for accounts go. I know that sounds crazy. So we're going to call that account total. And then we have our date total. And then the last one, journal entry, I'm going to turn that one off. So now you could see I have date total right here. So it's totaling up everything for the date. And if I were to, let me collapse the cash, that's a big one. And look at, sorry, you guys could hear my dog. I can see the date total listed here, and I can see the account total. So now I have my totals set for us. And so I can again use my visuals up here to go up and down as I need, and I choose. All right, oh, let's come in here, and actually before I do that, let me duplicate it because I'm gonna do one more thing. So let me come in here and rename this to trial balance. If you paste, it loses the formatting. Okay, And somehow, oh, I undid. Okay, let me come back in. And now I'm duplicated that one. And this time I'm going to call this one a journal entry. So we're going to create a journal entries page as well. So I'm going to highlight that and we'll call this one journal entries. All right. Now for this one, all I'm going to do is take the journal entry and drag it above the rows. So now I can see my journal entries. And I do need to clean up my subtotals a bit. So I'm going to come back into the format and I'll go to subtotals and check them out. So if I scroll all the way to the bottom, I have, okay, here's where they start. So this top one says date, the journal entry says date total. That should be grand total. And then basically everything is pointing to what is right above it. So that was journal entry. So account number should be journal entry total. And the date should be account total. And then journal entry is off. I think I have that right. Let's see, grand total, journal entry, account total. And I think that's right. Yes. Okay. Yes, because we don't have date only one time. Okay, so these are our journal entries, and we're probably going to be only looking at these one at a time. So for example, if I'm going to come back into the trial balance one, and I'm going to turn on the cross-reference report, and then now I'm going to tell it so I can create a drill down from trial balance to see the whole journal entry. So what I need to drill through on is the journal entry number. So I'm going to open up transactions and take that journal entry number, which I can see right here. It's trying to summarize it. Let me highlight the journal entry and go to this column tools. And I'm going to change the summarization to don't summarize. So let me close that out and try that again. There. So now I have my journal entry numbers here. Now, if I were to, oh, I have these backwards. Whoops, let me do it again. Come in here, turn that on, add journal entry. There we go. Okay, so collapse that up. So if I were to get rid of that, come in here, I can see journal entry 14, right mouse click. I could choose to drill through to the journal entry page. And right now I'm only seeing that particular line. I want to see the whole journal entry. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let me get rid of the account number. And instead of keep off filters, I'm going to turn it off. So I'm not keeping off filters. I'm only keeping the filters that I'm selecting. So now watch what happens. If I come into one of these, and actually let me delete the date too. And delete that. Okay, all those came over. So now on this line number 14, if I right mouse click and I go to journal entries, and here I can now see both sides of the transaction. I see everything for the entire journal entry. And actually, I don't think I like that account total being on. So I'm going to turn that one off, select it, go to the paint roller, go to subtotals, find account total. I don't like that one. We'll turn it off. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. Actually, you know what? Let's turn off grand total too. Or journal and no, we'll leave the journal entry total on because we might you come straight to this page and use that. Now, because this is a drill down, I've got this icon here. So what I'm going to do is just slide that over a bit, and I'm going to change the format of this icon so that the background color is off. So now if I wanted to, in the desktop, I'd hold Control key down and click, but when I publish this, it wouldn't even be there. And I didn't mean for that page to be a drill down. So I'm going to delete that. Okay, so I'm actually starting to build out some things that allow me to do some drill downs. So I'm going to go to this blank page again, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to drag it between the blank and the trial balance. And then let's call this one, let's call it, I don't know, we'll call it dashboard. technically it's not a dashboard in the same respect that Power BI refers to a dashboard. Those are only created in the service, but we're going to have a series of visuals that allows us to look at some of our numbers. So for example, if I come in and add a clustered column chart, and I could start populating my field, I'm going to take that actual number and put it in values. And there is my actual number right there. And then let me also come in and I am going to, let's see, let me go to calendar and let me put in year in my axis so I could see my actual numbers by year. Now this is because I have unit accounts out here. That's why I'm seeing that. This is the unit account value. Everything else is balances out to 0. So one of the things that I may want to do is come into my accounts and I may want to change my, is it posting type? Go to accounts, check it out. Or yeah, posting type. I only want to see profit and loss information. So I'm going to put the posting type into a filter on this page and tell it I'm only interested in balance sheet information. And maybe I'm not interested in unit accounts at all. So one of the things that I could do is I have that, oh, you know what? I probably should have left this report line on because remember, it does show me unit account information. So I'm going to right mouse click on it here and turn off hide in report view. And now I can use it. Another way, if I don't always want to use it in my filter, so I'm going to bring it into my filter for this page, and I'm going to change it from basic to advanced, and I'm going to say does not contain the word unit, and I'll apply that. And now I've gotten rid of my unit accounts that way. So that's one of the things that I could do, and I can now come back in and hide it. Another way I could have done it is I could have come in here to accounts, clicked on the ellipsis and said, where is it? Show hidden, view hidden right there. And if I did that, I could have been able to still use it in my filters, even though technically it's hidden from everything else. So let me turn off view hidden. So this is my numbers, and it looks like a lot of them are showing up as negatives. Oh, that's, I guess that's good because that would be revenue. So maybe what I also want to do is come in and actually I've got the is income here. I could, let me first of all turn off the sum on that. And I could also come in and say, if this is, let me change it to basic. There should only be 2 options here, 0, 1. So these are my expenses. So now I have a report that shows my expenses. And then maybe I also, if I copy this and paste it, I could also come in and put in something. Maybe I'll do a little bar chart here instead. And this time, instead of, this is years, instead of years, what I might want to do is come in and grab my department. So here's my department, and I'll put my department in. And what this is doing for me is now if I come in and select a certain year, I could see the department. And if I don't like the fact that it's highlighted, one of the things I can do is come into this data drill option, and I can, is it under, oh, it's under format, sorry. It moves on you occasionally. All right, so this is my visual that I'm going to work on. Every visual, this is my title visual, and then I have this visual here. I have options. So when I select something on this visual, if I don't want it to highlight, I want it to completely filter, I'll choose filter. Now I'll select this visual, and I could do the same here in filter. And now I'm going to turn off edit interaction. So now if I select 2024, this will actually change. You can see how it's changing on me depending on the month I select. And likewise, if I look at service, I could see service here. So this is another thing that I can do. Also, one of the things that's really kind of cool now, if I came in and let me even do something a little bit different. Let me come in and change this. I'm going to select this and I am going to remove both this line item and this profit and loss one. And I'm going to change this visual. Instead of looking by departments, I'm going to have it use account categories. So now if I select account category, I guess I left unit on there, but didn't mean to. If I came in and maybe need to stretch that out a little more so I could read them. If I chose cost of goods sold, I still might want to work on that. Now I can see the dashboard for my cost of goods sold account. So that's pretty cool being able to do that. And the filter should still apply when I select a different year. Being able to see how the filters work. You could see how that it's still filtering. So this is something that's pretty cool that you could do. And you could also put drill down on here to see those accounts. So we would turn on the cross reference. And one of the things that I could do here as well is put in the journal entry number. And that would probably be all I need because the journal entry number, and I'm going to leave all filters on, but the journal entry number then would enable me to look at both of these, the trial balance or the journal entries. So I'm going to select, let's select sales return. That's really not a good visual to use with that. Let's see if I can change the, let's see, I want, well, I'm going to leave it like that, like it is. It's what happens when I go off script. If you hover over one of these, like I hover over tax expense, I can see the category. So I'm going to select tax expense and I'm interested in the year 2026. So if I right mouse click, did not get enough information. Oh, I need the date too. Let me open up the date, drag the date in. There we go. Now let's hover and still don't have enough. Let me get the account number. Okay, account and that in here. Do I have enough now? I don't think I do. Let's come back in and take a look at what I need. I need account number, date, journal entry. That should be all I need. Account, date, and journal entry. Oh, this one is looking at the year, not the full date. That's why I'm not seeing that. So let me come in here and let's put in date under the axis. So you could drill down and look at the date. And now when I highlight one of these, I should be able to, still not seeing it. I'm still missing something. But you could create these. Oh, you know what might help? Let me turn off the, oh, that was not even on. Oh, that's why. What a dingling. Okay, let's come in here. I need to include, I don't know why that one didn't show up. That's the second time. I did not include that. Oh, I don't have any drill down here. So let me get the date and then let me get the journal entry. Or the, well, and the account. Okay, now let's try it. You got to put it on the one you want to drill through. And nope, still not there. Okay, not sure what I'm missing, but definitely missing something. So we're looking for that word drill through. Anyhow, I'm not going to waste time on that. But you could build some really cool stuff. Now, another thing that you could do here is when I select one of these, I'm going to select that's tax expense again. One of the options we have are what we call small multiples right here. And I could take the account number and add them into the small multiples. Now I have little individual charts or visuals for every account number that contains information in this area. So like if I come in here to inventory, now I'm looking at inventory accounts. And if I come into cost of goods sold, I'm looking at cost of goods sold amount. And they're all sharing the same access information, but this is another really cool way of being able to, oh, look, I guess because I had the year, I had too much information. Now I have my drill through. So I could go into the trial balance now, and now I'm looking at that information. And then once again, I could still continue working on my journey and go into, and I had it turned on for the dashboards and didn't mean to. But yeah, so that would be how that journey would work. Okay, so a lot of cool stuff that you can actually do here. It's kind of neat. All right. Now I'm going to show you this really cool visual. I don't have that long to show it to you. We're going to call this one a profit and loss. And let's call this profit and loss statement. So yes, I'm actually going to put in a profit and loss statement. And I'm going to add in this visual right here, this profit-based visual. And it is a matrix. Really, that's all it is, with a twist to it, with some additional functionality. So I have rows, columns, and values that I need to populate. So the first thing I'm going to do is start with my rows. So let me collapse up all this information so it'll be nice and clean. This is where I go into that statement line, because if you recall, I'm going to pull up the Excel sheet here. This is basically my statement. So I have all the sales accounts and then I total the sales. So row number 1, this is kind of like a sorting option. So everything is nice and unique. So I'm going to start by going in and telling it, I want to get the name. I don't want the ID. I don't want ISO1. I want it to say sales and total sales and all that. So I'm going to get the report line and drag it into rows. And so now I have that information. Now I'm going to get the account information and include that as well. Okay, so I have my rows set. Now I'm going to come in to transactions and I'm going to get that actual number and put it in values. And now I can see some of the information starting to appear in my matrix. So right now it's not that impressive. And if I open that up, I can see all the sales numbers, full accounts that appear there. All right, so again, not super impressive, but what I can do from here, first of all, I need to come into accounts and I need to tell it that I'm going to do a filter on this page. I only want profit and loss, and that should get rid of, I don't know what's under that. Oh, I have that expense. I guess I did not include that one well. Let me quickly go into my accounts here where I added in $800 should be ISO 11, or if it starts with an 8. So I don't know why that did not populate. So let's come in here and let's quickly do a filter starting looking at 8. Oh, actually, let's do it this way. Begins with 8. Yeah, ISO 11. Oh, some of those are showing up on the balance sheet. That's not right. Okay. But the other ones are not, and they're not unit accounts. So I don't think. So they look like they're populating right. So, okay, let me just come back in. All right. So, let me look at my statement lines. I'm going to ignore it for right now because, again, this is probably Belinda being a bit new. So we're going to just leave it as is right now and not worry about it. Okay, so this part, yeah, you're looking at it going, yeah, that's interesting, but not that exciting. Let's make it exciting. Okay, so now that I have this information in here, I want to start putting in my total information. So what I'm going to do on this visual is click on the ellipsis, and one of the things that's different is I have this edit option, and I'm going to click on it, and I've got my cells right here, and one of the things I'm going to do is select right click on the cells and tell it I want to add a row after it. And here's the title. So I'm going to call it total sales. And in the formula, I'm just going to get all the information from the sales section. That's it. And I'm going to click over here in this applied step. And I'm going to say, I'm going to use custom formatting number 1. And I'll show you what that is in a moment. And I want to format it looking like that with 2 decimal places. Now I'm going to click after cost of goods sold other, right mouse click again and say add row after. And we're going to call this one cost of goods sold. And the formula here, this is not DAX. This is just me clicking on fields. And I'm going to add these 2 sections together. And this also will use custom 1, and the formatting will be the same. And now on this new cost of goods sold, I'm going to do after, and I'm going to call this one gross margin. And the formula here will be total sales minus the cost of goods sold. And this one will use custom 2, and I'll set the formatting. And then now I'm just going to come in, actually, you know what, we're going to just make this one disappear. I'm going to hide that row. Okay. Oh, that's a premium feature, so I can't do that. Okay. That's where you got to pay. If you see this pop up, you got to pay. So we don't want that to happen. So we're going to come in and add a row after. And on this one, we're going to call it total expenses. And normally it would be much more complex than this, but I'm just kind of keeping it simple right now so that we can see what we're doing. This will also be custom 1, and I'll set that format. And then I'm going to add one more row after that, and we're going to call this one net profit loss. You could see this is a super simple report. I'm going to get the gross margin minus the total expenses. I'm going to make this one a custom 3. I'm also going to I'm going to make it bold, and let's see if I can underline it, and then I'll format it. Okay. Now that I've got all that done, I'm going to go back to the report, and now you could see this looks a little bit different. And if I were to click on it, okay. I was trying to see if I could get rid of that, but I guess I can't now. If I were to open up one of these, just like a visual, I could see all of that. Now I can, I could make this tabular if I wanted to, but now I have these nice columns and I could see what the heck is going on. So now that I have actual here, let me come in to my budget, and I'm going to add in a budget under values as well. And when I do, and I can see I'm at time, so bear with me just a little bit, and we'll, because I want to show you this. So now I'm going to come back in and edit this, and I'm going to say, all right, want to, this time, I'm going to right mouse click on the column and do a column after, and the column after will be variance, and the formula will be actual. Actually, it should be budget, shouldn't it? Budget. Come on. Budget. Budget minus, I was clicking on the title instead of one of the fields, in variance. And I want to set this, what style do I want to do this? I'll make it bold. Why not? So it stands out. Then also I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to do, let's see, add a little conditional formatting. Oh, actually, I don't want to do that. Although I could put some conditional formatting. I think instead, what I'm going to do is let me click back. I'm going to close that out. I'm going to click back here on this column variance, and I'm going to put a separator on the right side only. So now I have that line, and that looks good. And I might even put like a background color on the header a little bit. Let's make it a little lighter, just so it stands out a little. Okay, cool. I like that. And so now I'm going to go back to my report mode. So you could do some really cool stuff here. I do also want to point out in the columns, one of the new things that they have is, this is the last thing I'm going to show you, and you could do even more things with the paid version than what I'm showing you. But I'm going to put in the year in the columns. And now I could see, and it didn't take the header over, but I could see the year for each one of these. And that's pretty cool. But watch what happens when I put month in. So now I have year and month for, like, there's the 2024. I could see the year and the month, and notice how this information in the rows is staying static, so I could do comparisons. And that's pretty darn awesome. I think that is just really, really cool. Let me, before I go into the closing on that, oh, I'm on the page already. Here, it's profitbase.com, and it would show you. And then let me go to the pricing, because this is where you can see the things that are different here. So you could export to some Microsoft products, which is kind of cool. And you could expand and collapse column headers. So you could collapse up the whole year if you wanted to. And there's some other things you could do, but it's definitely worth checking out. I'm going to go back to my slideshow. I don't know if there's any questions. Here is the handout. If you guys want to get or the link, if you want to get a copy of the PowerPoint from today, so that you can have access to that information. And I'm turning on chat. Okay, I do not see any questions in chat. Are there any questions? I know I went through things kind of quick, but it's pretty easy to navigate around in reports once the data is modeled. So, and it's fun. And I am now in love with this financial builder. I think it's going to change a lot for people to be able to look at financial statements in that particular way. The only thing I would suggest doing also would be to look at maybe build the dates using the fiscal period. So you could make a notation if the period is closed out. So when you finish a month out, you could say, yes, this period is completely closed. And by acknowledging that that period is closed, you know, the statement shouldn't be changing beyond that. I think that is the final thing I would do. That being said, I want to thank Haley and Marlena and all the people at DexPro for giving me a place to share two of my favorite technologies at the same time. So thanks, everyone. Have a good one.